Welcome to the Big Screen Symposium podcast. The Big Screen Symposium was held in Auckland at the Victory Events Centre on the 5th and 6th of April 2024. Join Australian casting director Anousha Zarkesh and moderator Fraser Brown as they discuss essential elements of casting, finding new talent, attaching high-profile actors, the importance of cultural and respect protocols, as well as considerations for early development and budgeting. This session was a collaboration with Actors Equity.
Kia ora tātou. Can everyone hear me all right? Very good. We were just sort of going, I wonder how many people are going to show up, but I'm kind of stoked. It's good numbers. Let's hope we can keep everyone in the room, not lose anyone. Feeling a little pressure. Yeah, well, look, welcome to the session. I'm very excited to be talking with Anousha today. We've had some good chats already. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about, both as an actor and a producer. So I'm really excited to get into it. I'm going to try my best not to talk too much, which is something I quite like doing. I might let Anousha talk from time to time. All right, without any further ado, I'm going to let Anousha tell you about herself.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Casting. I'm a casting director, have been for almost 30 years, believe it or not, even though I look so young. I started very early. I worked for a company when I first started called Molyneux's Casting, Liz Molyneux Casting, who was probably the first and only casting director in Australia at the time. And she did films, she did Home and Away and Babe, and she was an actor herself and became the first casting director. So when I started, there was almost no other casting directors bar Liz, which is quite extraordinary. So in 30 years, we now have almost over, I think, 80 casting directors of various kinds and associates in Australia, in an industry that's actually, a cottage industry similar to yours, and all struggling to work. We are all freelance as well, like you guys. The industry is all freelance, so we're as good as our last job. We're employed on a job-by-job basis like actors. And so, we struggle to keep working as well. And I've been lucky enough to kind of work continuously for 30 years. So I'm very grateful. And after I left Molyneux's, I went to work for myself and have done for over 20 years and done a variety of work. And I'm lucky because I've worked with incredible filmmakers like Warwick Thornton and Rachel, a lot of Indigenous filmmakers in my country, because I think I call myself a palatable darkie, the only darkie in the village. When I first started, it was a sea of white. And so I think I took all the jobs that no one else wanted to take. And I first did my first film, which was Floating Life, Clara Law's first film, which was a Cantonese Mandarin English film. And that's how I got started, because it was my passion. And I wanted to work with filmmakers who were telling their stories that pretty much wasn't being told at the time. And so now diversity inclusion is really cool, and people are funding projects like that. So I've sort of continued to do that work as well as do, obviously other shows. I started on Home and Away, believe it or not, 5 years on Home and Away.
No.
So it was quite great working with a whole lot of young kids and young stars that have continued now to become big international stars, which is great for them. So now I am the Vice President of the CGA, which is the Casting Guild of Australia, which was quite extraordinary quite a few years ago. Obviously, we all work freelance. So we all started to get together because we had similar issues around casting, working with producers, budgets, agreements, talent, obviously actors' issues. So we came together, even though we were our arch enemies, working together because we were all competing together, and we all thought, oh my God, we're not going to talk to that casting director. They might take our job. Finally, we got over ourselves and went, actually, there's power in numbers, and actually form together and come together and talk about all the issues that to be recognised, one, because we are a head of department. We come on very early on the project with a director and producer, and we wanted to work around, the budgets, issues that were not being recognised as an industry, as a head of department, as well as, talking on and advocating for actors. So we've been very much involved in that, even though I think actors think that we are possibly sabotaging their careers or enhancing their careers. But, there is this sort of demystifying the fact that as casting directors, we are reliant on what actors do. We love what actors do. We need actors to make us look good, and then we come together. So we kind of wanted to go, how can we, I mean, our hats basically are creative. We work with actors, we audition actors, we love what actors do. We want the best. Every time we audition an actor, we hope that they're going to nail it, kill it, get the best job, make us look good. As well as come on, the other business side of our hat is agreements, negotiating salaries, almost doing what producers do. And it's got harder and harder and harder each year, to the point where we now are involved in attaching high-profile cachet performers to get your films up. So in a minute, it'd be great to know if the room's full of producers or a room full of actors, so that we can actually, hone in any questions that you might have, because it'd be great to be much more informal and to hear what you want me to talk about, or what we should talk about, what anyone's interested in, because I could just talk nonstop, and it may not be what you want. So I think, I'm really interested and passionate now, which is the CGA, the Casting Guild, is about lobbying for basically making sure that actors are getting paid properly. What happens with development, when films are prelim stage or in development stage, they have not consulted casting directors or other heads of department about what they should pay for actors. So the budgets come in because they're trying to make the budget fit a certain criteria. They've got to get it under 4 mil, they've got to get it under 3 mil. They go to the funding bodies with these kind of half-assed kind of budgets. And then we get it. Once the film gets funded, they're $1 million under, or they're $500,000 under on talent budgets. And then we go, well, who did your budget? This is ridiculous. You can't afford X, Y, and Z. And so I look at them and everyone's being paid, peanuts. And you go, well, you can't afford the actors that you're talking about. So we're now talking to SPA, which is our Screen Producers Association, and they've agreed, in association with the agents, to consult with us, and that they're now pushing really hard to talk to us and make sure that they consult with casting directors to be involved in their budgeting before the development of, putting their budgets in for development, so that they're realistic budgets for actors. And this is for you guys, I mean, if you're actors in the room, as well as producers not getting stitched up at the other end, which always happens. And so we're inevitably always going, well, how did you get to this stage? You're now $300,000 over on your budget. I'm sure Christine understands this too. So it's endless conversations about another casting director in the room. So we have lots of conversations with producers going, we understand you need to get your budget under budget to get it financed. And, we talk about cachet actors and attaching marquee actors as well. That's the other issue that's become a massive problem as well, because all producers can't attach Sam Neill to every project, Toni Collette to every project, Nicole Kidman to every project. It's this endless, there's 50, 60, projects a year in Australia that are trying to attach the same actors to get the films up. And there's got to be a stop now. And we're trying to talk to SPA and, the funding bodies and distributors and investors to go, we can't keep doing this. It's just it's not possible. And how do we go around that? Because in the end, casting directors become almost like unpaid producers. Because we work on projects. I might be working 10, 15, unfinanced projects at a time, and we're not being paid. And we're supposed to be miracle workers, and there's a lot of expectations on casting directors to perform these miracles, to attach Sam Neill to every single project. And so it's going, I just want to be on the farm and make wine. As does everybody else. Yeah. So, we can talk around this, because I think it'd be great to create the new next level stars, to be bold and push back as producers, to push back, and which we try as casting directors to say, please push back to the funding bodies, distributors, investors. Let's create our own, and finance your films based on the story, not who's attached. And I know marketing, we've got the same problems with broadcasters and sorry, I'm talking nonstop now. Broadcasters and, streamers saying who's on the poster. It's dictated to by the marketing managers and branding managers and these people that are called branding people, or marketing people, who get involved in casting decisions about who's on your poster, who's rating, who's their IMDb star meter, and we're talking about TikTok stars, who's going to start. And you go, are we seriously having this conversation?
Can you go into more detail, maybe with examples of that pushback situation? Because I'm just trying to imagine, saying no, that doesn't tend to work. How do you sell it? Is there the idea of basically a far less bankable actor in a role when the finance is saying, here's the bare minimum, this is what we need, this is the non-negotiable. How does pushback work in that situation?
Well, good question. And I think on a job-by-job basis, project by project, it's a bit like, Geoffrey Rush getting in at the piano. There was a lot of pushback and saying, no, Geoffrey's a nobody, great theatre actor, should have been, and there was a no one attached to that project. I was working at Mulliners at the time. And it was impossible to get that film up. And what a story, great story. Of course, to sell it overseas, whether it had, Sam Neill in it or, I don't know, I can't think of another actor who could have played it, but someone. In the end, the film is going to sell itself ultimately at the box office. If it's a great film, it's a great film. And luckily they pushed back, and it took years to get that film financed. And in the end, David Hill, Scott Hicks went, you know what? I've always wanted, Geoffrey Rush, and we're just going to make it. For fuck's sake, I'm over it, and do it. And so they did, and the outcome is incredible. But I think inexperienced, I think as producers get more experienced and a bit more savvy and trust themselves and can push back on certain things and go, look, sometimes we've got to attach a name, and I get it. The bigger the budget, the more pressure to put someone bigger in it and to attract cachet, marquee. But I think if you're doing a young project or, like Heartbreak High, for instance. There's a whole lot of amazing kids in that show, or a comedy show that hasn't got a huge budget. You can say, we're financing this based on the story and the comedy, and just push back as best you can. Christine, I don't know how you feel about this too, but I think some people just don't have the strength to kind of push back and say, it's impossible, we can't do it. And when you do, after months and months of casting and trying to attach, eventually they go, okay, you tried, here's your money, we cast who we want. And you go, God, why didn't we do that in the beginning? We've wasted so much angst. So I think it all depends on the job and the type of project, and if it's whether it's a Netflix streamer or Amazon versus the ABC or SBS or kind of whatever budget it is. I just did a show called Swift Street on SBS, which is a really low budget film, and there was even then it was a huge push to finance. With a huge name, and it was all set in Western Melbourne, African. 99% of the cast were of a diverse background, and they wanted someone famous, cachet to sell the project and bums on seats, and it was just going around in circles. And in the end, we kind of went, okay, we'll try for Cliff Curtis, and Cliff went, yeah. And I went, oh my God, fantastic. This is fantastic, and love the project. And, we were lucky in that situation. He resonated with the director and the material and came on board, for mates rates, and just what a trooper and what a great project. We were lucky. Otherwise I think SBS would have still probably commissioned the show, and we would have cast it, and it would have been fine with or without Cliff. But we kind of went, okay, it was great. And he said yes. So we were lucky. But I think there's times we can you can push back. And I do encourage producers to do that and go. And part of SPA is well aware of that this is a frustration. And I think as a group, I think you've got Sparta instead, as coming together as a group and going, we can't keep maintaining this. It's impossible.
Can I add an idea? Because I think picking up on what you said, Max, I don't know if pushback is necessarily the right way to think about it, because I know what you're saying, but also I'm hearing you, Max, and there are some times on certain projects where there is just a hard no, and it's normally driven by the financial model. What is the sales agent required as a baseline to sell the project? That there is just often a hard kind of, we must get 3 million in sales as a baseline to get our money out. Otherwise, we simply can't do the project. So in that situation, no amount of pushing back will make any difference unless something else is going to move. So to make that work, there has to be compromise, right? So in that situation, if we have to push back and say, look, we have to go with someone else, then something has to give, right? Whether that's the budget's got to come down, or we've got to raise more finance, or we've got to think of some other way to do this. Maybe there's another actor that we can bring in a smaller role. My point is that the only way to get around that, rather than just pushing back, is think of it as a collaboration, which is what you and I have been talking about. It has to be, that collaboration needs to start right from the start. when we're talking to funders, financiers in particular, we need to be really upfront about what are the things that are required to get this show off the ground, what is inflexible and what is flexible, what can we compromise on, so that when we engage early with the casting director and we start having conversations about, the sales agents are saying it's Nicole and Sam and Tony Collette and otherwise you stuffed, we can go, well, it's just not going to fucking work because they're not going to do it. It needs to be a collaboration, I think, rather than a pushback.
And I'm well aware that, obviously big streamers, there's big budgets. It's a business now. Our industry is a business. In the good old days, we're storytellers, where the smaller budgets, more power, more risk averse. We could take risks about stories. And so now we have unfortunately come to, even with our public broadcasters, there's an expectation that we're going to put this together. We need bums on seats. Film's a whole different bag of tricks, but TV's now becoming a similar situation. So the days where the ABC could finance a very risky program and have a whole lot of actors start and we create the stars. I mean, I just go, where are the stars coming from now? If we've got to just, where are we creating these cachet actors, marquee actors? So sometimes on some projects, the project's being financed no matter what, whoever's in the show, and they would prefer to have someone that they can put on the poster. And other times, which is pretty much what it is, it's about marketing and who's going to turn on, who's going to switch on, because there's so much content now. So we're competing on such a level, and those big organisations need to make money. Actually, in the room, are we producers or are we actors? How many actors and producers? Great. So half-half.
And what about directors?
Great.
And writers? It's a good.
So it'd be great to know if you've got any questions while we're talking, because we might be talking.
Well, can I ask a question actually that's going to feed into that? Of the actors, all of those people, hands up, who's got a project in development that, whether it's film or television, that they need, either they think or that some funder is telling them that they need a marquee talent on it?
Pretty much everyone.
Okay, has anyone got a project that doesn't require marquee talent? Yeah? Great.
In the conversations,
you look very rare. Amazing.
It'd be interesting to know that who's asking. Is it the sales agents, distributors, funding bodies? Because even in Australia now, funding bodies, Screen Australia, Screen Create New South Wales, Screen West, all even the smaller funding bodies are actually doing the same thing and involved in casting decisions really early on, which they never did. So and now there might be three parties. It might be the distributor, the sales agent, and a funding body that are all having conversations and directing the producers and telling them how to do it. And then we've got four different voices all sort of getting involved and going, no, I don't like Sam Neill. I want Hugo Weaving, or I want Tony Collette, and then I want, no, I'd like Nicole. And you go, oh, good luck getting any of them, So sort of then they're fighting it and sort of thinking that it's just so easy to attach all these people. And there's sort of an unrealistic expectation from those people, which means producers, as you guys, are on the ground doing all the hard work, they are expecting you to kind of provide that. That didn't answer any question.
Well, can I ask a question then? Given that we all have accepted that the demand or the requirement to have marquee talent is increasing, right? That's just a fact of the industry, right? Albeit as hard as it is. There are examples, and we can think of many of them. You just mentioned the actor that I've just forgotten his name, who's just here recently from Shine. Jeffrey Rush, right? So Jeffrey Rush has just been here making a film with a youngish New Zealand filmmaker. There are lots of examples of marquee actors signing on to projects that are relatively small, indie, maybe first-time directors. I know it's a difficult one to answer, but from your experience, what has been? Can you think of a couple of examples where it has worked and why? What has it been about the package, the project, what's made the difference?
Again, job by job, project by project, actor by actor, because it starts with the story, clearly, and an actor understanding where, and obviously casting directors are aware of what actors may or may not want to do. If we know them, we might go, okay, Jeffrey Rush, for instance, may not have worked for quite a few years. So he's looking for work and he's looking for an indie job to resurrect his career, perhaps, or an actor's coming out of a long-running TV show like Home and Away or Neighbours and has never done a film role. And there's this great character who's now gone from a teenager to an adult role and they can't wait to play it. And they've got international cachet, US series as a teenager, now wants their first adult role and is happy to come home and do a film role that's probably low budget, just to kind of play a different character. So I suppose as casting directors, we should be informed about perhaps what an actor might want to do, or we might have heard interviews and they think, oh, actually, we want to play the romantic lead. We never get to play the romantic lead. Or we want to be in a horror film, and because we love horror films. So we would possibly say, oh, don't go with Joe Blow, go with Jack Blow, because he wants to play this, and I heard him talking the other day, or I know that he might want to play a different kind of character. Then you have to formulate how to get it to them. Obviously, what happens now is with those high-profile actors, they've got US agents, managers, they might have Australian agents. So we might have a relationship with the Australian agent. We might pitch the documents to them, the script. That usually then has to go to their whole team in the US, because they're usually working in the US, or even if they've got a UK agent, we might then approach the UK agent, but those UK agents might have to then approach the US. So it might go three ways. It goes Australia, we might go secretly to the UK agent because it's easier to deal with. They actually answer your phone calls and they respond. The US agents rarely respond. There's no money in it, they don't care. Unless you can formulate relationships with US agents like, I don't know, CAA or, any of those agents, but they rarely respond. During COVID, they did. They were looking for work for their actors. But obviously they don't think there's enough money, on Australian or New Zealand projects. Mm-hmm. They wait for their actors, and they try and sabotage them. I mean, luckily I've got relationships with some of the actors, so I can ring them personally and can say, there's a project coming. Have they even sent it to you? They go, no. I could privately send it to them if I can. And then they talk to their agents, and there's a way around that sometimes. Agents hate that because they are trying to they're trying to control their actors on certain projects. So whatever way we can get to those actors, if we know them, is always a great way to do it, even though ethically it's probably not the right thing to do. But you get so frustrated with the lack of response from some of these agents that are working with high-profile actors because they can make more money. Then it's up to you as the producing team, director team, to have amazing pitch documents. So you need a pitch deck, a fantastic sort of visual impression, a great letter to that actor, a great script, obviously, maybe some information about the creative team, the writer, the director, some work. They want to see your visual documents. If you're a filmmaker, if you haven't made anything before, then they want to look at your short film. They're going to suss you out. If they're even going to bother reading the script, they need to see what you've done. And it better be good. Otherwise, they're just not going to look at it. And the team, don't forget, there's a whole lot of gatekeepers, and they all read the scripts. In Australia, there's agents that read it and they go, no, this is not for my client. They've read the script, they're not interested. They'll try and sell you someone else in their stable, which is always great. Yes. And then I think then it's up to that whole package, the one-stop shop package. You can't just go in dribs and drabs. It needs to be packaged up beautifully. And I usually encourage producers and directors to write, to have it all wrapped up together. And then I just push, and then we send it, and then we ring and we email and we ring, and no answer, and hopefully we can try and get around it. And then we give them a time limit, hopefully. Sometimes they just waste your time for months on end and they don't respond. And they could have easily said, we're not interested. We couldn't give a shit. I don't care. Go to the next actor. But they don't. And you wait in hope. And then every now and then an agent will ring and go, yeah, our client just read it. They love it. They're attached. Let's start talking. Sometimes I encourage producers and directors, particularly if they're not financed. And of course, this is the chicken and the egg. You need that actor to finance your project. And they go, well, is the project financed? Because we're not going to attach our actor until it's financed. And you go, that we need a letter of intent from your actor. We need them to sign on, and then we can go find the money. So it's this, they know the drill, they pretend they don't, and then you go, how can we finance our project if we're not? So as casting directors, bringing it back to me and the casting directors, I think it's very difficult because we are seen as now miracle workers, and then if it doesn't happen, then they get frustrated with us, and we can only do what we can do. And there is a million gatekeepers that stop their client. And so we've got to start thinking outside the box about who do we approach? Who is the next ones on the rise? Our people are going, okay, the next actor, I know they're about to blow up in a new show. And so we've just seen, like Jacob Elordi, for instance, if anyone's watched Euphoria. So no one knew who Jacob Euphoria was. He's been jobbing in LA for ages. So until Euphoria became a sort of a bit of a phenomena, even then, I could have gone, wow, he's an amazing actor and fantastic. He meant nothing unless he was on your streamer. So if they're in a show that's in Netflix, they'll know who that person is. If it's an Acon or an Amazon show, they'll go, oh, we love that actor. He's in our show, blah, blah. And they claim them as their own in their stable. And so all of a sudden Jacob Elordi's become Saltburn and, he's the next best thing and everyone's going, oh my God, Jacob Elordi's one of ours, No one gave a shit about Jacob Elordi, 2 years ago. So I think, through that, as casting directors, we're supposed to be informed of the new up-and-coming actors, and they still, even then, producers go, well, he hasn't done anything, or, how do we know he's going to be big? And you don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We can only assume because we saw him in a show and it should be, and they're great, and why don't we take the risk and do it? Or package 3, we call A-listers, and then we go the B-listers, the next lot, they've got maybe a domestic cachet in your country. I mean, you've got a truckload of them. We even steal yours in our country. We see the talent, like the Robin Malcolms of the world. How amazing is Robin? And so, Robin's worked on plenty of shows that I've worked on. And, for her to be acknowledged internationally is about bloody time. But, I think if there's a whole lot of people, like Richard Roxburgh or Robin Malcolm, or kind of, have a little bit of a cachet internationally, but they're not going to sell your picture. They're not going to put bums on seats domestically. And so if you go, okay, we've got 3 or 4 of those actors who are amazing, who are living in your country, who want to work on your job, maybe that they're the way to go. And let's think that way.
So it seems a big outtake from that, to go back to the marquee casting, right, is actually, from experience, come to the casting director as early as possible. And let's talk about there's a few roadblocks in the way of that. And the biggest one being we often can't afford to pay you because the project hasn't been funded yet. But notwithstanding that for a minute, talking to you early, engaging you early, so that because the reality is there's no, it was a trick question. There is no easy answer. There's no trick. This is how you get Nicole Kidman on your film. The reality is it's a collaboration. It's get as much intel as you can and make smart decisions, right? And be willing to compromise. And there is just no other way around it. I want to open up to some questions, but
just saying that we do work for nothing, and we always have. Yeah. I've worked for years for nothing on development. I have 5, 10, 15 shows that's not being paid for. And every now and then we as casting directors, as part of the guild, are going, we can't keep maintaining that. We're not just, and we work on it for years with no payment. Like a couple of grand wouldn't hurt. And now Screen Australia and the screen funding bodies are actually giving development money to projects that they believe in. And some of that money should be going to casting directors. It's a mere, it's a pittance of money, but they're doing it. And so there's a bit of pressure on the screen funding bodies to provide money to those people for, development.
I 100% agree, and I think that there needs to be a shift in our thinking so that early development is seen as casting is seen as a development above the line expense, not below the line. And to go back to you, kind of the casting budgets blowing out, often from a producer's point of view, it's because you push that problem down the road. In the old days, you go, oh, we've only got 300 grand, I'll solve that problem later. And you push it down the road because casting generally doesn't happen until you're greenlit, you're in production, and then it's too fucking late. So you've got to do that stuff early, and it does need a shift in thinking from the funders. We need to be able to get more, and I do think that there is a shift. Does anyone agree? At least, I don't know that there's many mechanisms to get more funding up front, but at least people are understanding that we need to get that, and that projects will not get up if we don't.
And we can just help. We consult and advise and say, let's talk about the budget. Let's just look at your budget and what's the minimum, maximum, and what someone would actually, would want. So when you go in and say, okay, we want Sam Neill, I'm to keep using Sam Neill as an example, but that you have put the appropriate budget in there. So because there's no surprises at the other end when you go, well, you can't afford him. It's just not going to happen. So what were you thinking? So you need to consult with people about talent budgets so that the actors are getting paid properly.
Yep.
And you've prepared. Sorry, there was a question.
Kia ora. I just was interested in talking about what you're talking about, developing marquee talents in terms of finding a way to make an industry, like a local industry, self-sustaining through having the constant development of marquee talent so that people continue to want to come to our national cinema. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
So New Zealanders watching New Zealand content. Yeah, that's great. Australians have the same problem. Yeah. Look, I don't know. I just think there's breakout shows, and I think things resonate with an audience when they're done storytelling that is truthful, and we just don't know. I mean, some shows just break out, and they break out because they're just great stories, and they get to work internationally as well as domestically. I think creating your own stars. I mean, you've got a truckload of them yourself. You do. And I just think then you promote them we're bigger. We've got a bigger population, obviously a much more bigger media push and a lot of industry magazines and social media organisations that really promote actors. I mean, we've got the tall poppy syndrome too. No one likes a braggart. No one wants anyone to go, here I am. We're not like American star system. In fact, we try and pull everyone down. So, but I think if there's sort of a sense of, but within our industry, we're really proud of the filmmakers and the actors that break out. So when they do well overseas or are great filmmakers, we do claim them. We claim New Zealanders as our own, as you know. So I think we're proud of as Anzac's sort of connection. So I don't know how to answer that except to say to really push. I think there needs to be government incentives. I think basically and also promote our own content. And we were talking earlier about we've got this new campaign that was set up with Brian, with SPA and the MEAR union, Actors Union, called Make It Australian. And we were lobbying our federal government, the Minister of the Arts, about, because I think the government doesn't understand how the industry works. And they think if we make incentives to bring foreign, content or foreign filmmakers, Americans to Australia, that will all trickle down and, the industry's so well and we'll give this sort of 70 million locations funding to bring international, jobs to us without actually investing in Australian content and Australian stories. And so there was a big push and there was a lot of organisations involved, run by very prominent actors like Brian, who is passionate about Australian stories, to go and lobby and chew the ear off of the governments of saying you need to retain our 40% rebate, taxation for filmmaking. And so that Australians can keep making Australia. Otherwise, we just couldn't do it. Like New Zealand, there's no rebates or incentive for filmmakers to continue because it's just too hard. It's too hard. And so, as we still have the 40% rebate in our country so that we can actually afford to do it. So distributors come on board and we celebrate our own work. I think that's how we do it and feel passionate about it, and then hopefully that'll trickle down and they fund the right projects that resonate. But, no one can tell. I mean, when they sort of, everyone's sort of going, well, we need to know who your audience is and anticipating that audience. No one knows, really. No one knows what's going to break out and what's not. I mean, who knows? Just don't know.
I have a couple of thoughts on that I would like to add, and perhaps they will be slightly controversial, but I think even before you start lobbying, I think that it has to start from an industry that wants to build those stars. And we missed the boat in New Zealand. You're humble, and we've talked about this before, but Australia did this much better than us, and they did it consciously. They went, and I don't know whether I should credit Graham Mason with this, it might have been before him actually, but there was a conscious decision to go, actors are going to have more power, that they're going to be more important to get shows funded. We need to build Australian stars. How do we do it? And they incentivised the industry in Australia to do that. They had, and the MEAA was significant in this. They were able to essentially put in quotas so that, if you had international productions coming down, then there's a certain amount of Australian talent that had to be on the product. And that pissed a few people off, it pissed producers off. But lo and behold, the industry didn't fall over like a lot of people said. In New Zealand, we, and when I say we, I mean some older, curmudgeonly white male producers that aren't in this room, actively went, we don't want to do that. That's a mistake. Those bloody idiots in Australia are going to build some uppity fucking actors, and then they're going to ruin the industry because they're all going to be... No, this is true. I stood up and argued with producers about this. And they said, no, let's not do it. We shouldn't do that. It's a real mistake. We do not want uppity, expensive actors here. What we want are Mexicans with cell phones that we can just screw into the ground and help drive our budget, keep our budgets low, because that's what's going to attract everyone here. It was a fundamental mistake, because now we need more actors. We need local talent. Like if you had 5 more Robin Malcolms to choose from when you're casting your project, it would be that much easier. And no one's losing. If we had 5 more Robin Malcolms and 5 more Josh Thompsons and 5 more Carl Urbans, you would have 5, 10, 15 more fucking shows getting made. So I think, sorry, I'm very passionate about it, because I think we missed that boat, and now we're at a crossroads. And for my money, I think we are still behind you, in the sense that there is, I sense still, and it frustrates me as both an actor and a producer, I see a us and them mentality still, right? There's a we can't talk to you because you're an act, the producers don't want to talk to the actors and the guilds don't want to talk to each other. That's bullshit. We need to break that down. We need to realize that the industry rises as a whole. We're only as good as our weakest link. If our actors are not getting paid enough, they're not able to sustain careers, therefore they've got other jobs, therefore they don't prep enough, therefore they don't audition that well, then you've got to bring everyone up at the same level. So I think it starts with that industry accepting that we've got to build stars. It's in everyone's best interest to build stars. How do we do it? Let's do it, because we have the talent. Clearly, you have the talent. We've got to build that talent. So I think that's and I feel like we're getting, does anyone agree? Does anyone not agree with that as a kind of let's have some questions.
Sorry, just circling back to what you said, Anousha, at the beginning, and Fraser, you backed up, about talking to casting directors at the development stage with budgets. For example, say a 2.5 New Zealand dollar film, which is the threshold for Spur, what percentage might you set aside in order to attract your marquee key talent?
Well, first of all, I don't think you can make a film in New Zealand for 2.5 million anymore. I think the lowest you could possibly make a feature film paying people above minimum wage is about 4 million. Just as a,
Look, it's difficult to say, because I think, realistically, some actors are getting paid $500,000 to $1 million per project on a $8 million Australian film, or a $12 million, $15 million film. They are expecting that kind of thing. We can't afford that. That's above the line costs. And usually that's coming from the distributor. If they want that actor, or, investors, if they want, I don't know, Nicole Kidman, and it's going to cost $1 million or $750,000, they have to come up with that money, because if they think that's worthy of paying its above the line cost, it should not eat into the budget of the film. So, but there's a constant compromise around that. Or then you say to an actor, we don't have that kind of money. We've got, $300,000, and that's a 6-week, 10-week shoot, whatever. We can only afford you for $300,000, take it or leave it. And they'll say, we'll leave it. Or I've never played that role. I've got 6 weeks off, or can you shoot me out in 4 weeks? I'll come on board. And what a great thing, because what a great team. I love that role. You just don't know. I mean, it's worth aiming high, pitching it, going for it, knowing that, it's a 99% chance that you're not going to get that person, but let's try it, because every now and then they say yes. And if we know the intel, hopefully casting directors know that intel and say, don't even bother, let's not even try. It's a waste of time. Or let's try Joe Bloggs because he's around. I know he's sitting about and he's looking for something really like this. I think this is the perfect project for that person. But, most of those high-profile actors, or international actors, I've just attached Dawn French to a role, which was a miracle. It's amazing, just at right time, right project. She loved it. She was touring Australia, which she is at the moment, and she went, oh, yeah, why not? And we just went, oh, my God, that was easy. And so those things happen. You go, brilliant. But of course, our union is really strong. We have to justify to our union why that actor should be, coming into the country and taking a job that an Australian could have been playing. So we're constantly having to justify to the union, well, the pressure on us to have a high-profile actor, otherwise the film wouldn't have been financed. And it wouldn't have. If it didn't get Dawn, we wouldn't have been able to raise the money. And so is this constant push-you-pull you. And the union have been really great in maintaining that for every imported actor, the budget of the film goes up 25%. And producers don't like that, but it's the only way to keep Australians working on Australian projects or any project, for instance, because it becomes, instead of a Category A film, we've got really strong agreements. And a Category A film is 100% Australian actors. The minute it's a Category B, you get one import. It's a 25% loading on top of all the cast budget. So it immediately ups the budget. So it stops producers going, oh, well, let's just bring a truckload of international actors in to make this film on an Australian project. And so it stops producers because it costs them $25,000. They're 25% of the talent budget, of the budget. It's a lot of money to add to have one import, and then it's 12.5% per actor after that. So it stops actors, imported actors on those jobs. Sorry.
Can I just add to your point also, getting that intel is the key, right? And so practically, to maybe try and answer your question, you can, there's two things, international casting directors versus Australian, New Zealand casting directors. You could probably get, let's talk about this. If I came to you with an early project, it's a $4 million film, we probably need one kind of marquee, and there's some other fun roles, what's it going to cost to kind of, I don't know, get your brain on it for a few days, an initial casting brief, rule out the people that we should just forget about, the Nicole Kidmans. Are we talking $2,000, $3,000?
Yeah, usually we know that no one's got any money, so we sort of go, it'd be great if you throw, what have you got? And they go, oh, $1,000.
We can give you a percentage of profit share as well.
That'd be nice.
That'd be good, yeah.
Come on as a producer, yeah. Can we take, 10% of the producer's net profits? Yeah. In fact,
damn it, you're onto it.
The Guild has been talking, the Casting Guild have been talking about, we are almost like producers. We are on your project for up to 2 or 3 years. We should come on board as a producer because we come on and we are the ones that get your film financed. We're starting to get a bit annoyed, actually, as a guild, saying that it's not fair because we don't get any compensation whatsoever. And then the film gets up and then they go bye and they pay us a fee and then we go away. It's difficult. It's become difficult. Anyway, I digress.
Obviously, I was joking about the net profit, but I think, but finding a way to incentivize, because we can't. No. Well, what I'm saying is, we should, as an industry, find a way to incentivize. It's not necessarily cash up front because there isn't any. But perhaps we have a 5%. I think it's a guideline in terms of what we should pay actors out of the SPIG or the Spur now it's called. Maybe we need to carve out a percentage that's a guideline to pay for casting directors to get because I think we've got to think outside the square about this. But I also wanted to say it's important to build the Australia-New Zealand casting directors up because and I'll tell you as an example, I've paid £10,000 to a UK casting director in the last maybe 6 years to do what I just. And he was really like, well, I'm doing you a real favour, pal. Like a couple of days, and he was dead serious, £10,000. £10,000 was what we needed the intel. It's like, we don't want to be doing that. We need to be building you guys up so that we can, the world is becoming smaller. You have the intel. Again, it's all about working smartly as a team in this part of the world.
And I think enhancing status is always good, and we're not good at it in Australia or in New Zealand. We're similar. And so I think as a guild, we have now raised, we're part of an international, I'm vice president of the Casting Guild, so I now lucky enough to have conversations with UK, Italian, American casting directors, and they are still, they've finally got an award with the Oscars for best casting at the Oscars. But which has been a long time, and they've been whinging. I mean, we've lobbied the actors for many years, and they've finally given us one best casting for film and television. We're like ahead of department. Thank you. So it's been great because it lifts our profile somewhat. We're not getting paid any better, but it's just nice to be acknowledged as the head of department. And I think, we then can actually talk to UK and US agents and have a presence, and our counterparts in other countries. So now we've got a place at the table with the International Casting Guild and with other casting directors who ask us as an Australian Casting Guild how they can enhance their own status in their countries, believe it or not. So we're way ahead of the game. And I think it's just, as we're talking about collaboration, lobbying, being a cohesive group, like the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, now SPA, we have a place at the table, and we can have, we can actually try and collaborate as a group, as a whole, and enhance us all, and to problem solve together, as opposed to individual guilds. Sorry, you've been putting your hand up for so long.
Hang on, hold your thought. But we'll get. Oh, it's Kushla. Oh, we didn't ask if there's any editors in the room.
No, I'm actually here as a producer. So I've got a project coming up that just the process, I just want to explain to anyone who hasn't been through the process. You apply for funding at the EDF, for the New Zealand Film Commission, which is early development, goes into your script. Then you apply for the ADF, which is advanced development funding, which is to pay for your casting director. So please, no casting director should be working for free in our country. I know they probably are, Christine. But, let's just stop this.
Hey.
Yeah. So the idea is to pay for your casting director to bring them on right early, because it is part of it. And you're absolutely right. You should have a producing credit. I've seen the loss of hair in that moment before shoot, just as that precarious. Yeah. So, but the question I have is around. So the project I've got coming up is around young people. So of course, this ensemble thing. And you're having to cast for an ensemble, which must be really tricky because you're dealing with, say, 28-year-old people playing 18-year-olds, et cetera, et cetera. This is a real mindfuck, right? Because you're dealing with, your marketing people who want stars, your director who wants talent. Just describe the process that you would go through to take on that creative project.
Yeah. Thank you. It's again a job by job producer director team, what they're after. I mean, as we come on, we come on board right from the beginning and set the tone. I mean, we're facilitating the director and producer's story, and so a lot of the conversations are about what they want, what they're looking for tonally. What we read the script. The more information, the more conversations we have, the better equipped we are at finding what they're looking for. And sometimes, actors present themselves, and you go, "Oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that role being played that way." They just blow us away. Actors just blow us away. And you go, oh my God, there's 20, 30 actors doing the same scene the same way. And then someone comes in and just like really fucks with it. And you go, oh my God, yeah. And then we always, as a group of people, if we're kind of flexible or, go, we hadn't thought about that, maybe that role being trans or that role being a woman or that person going, wow, I'd never thought about that person. So I think, I look at it as sometimes someone just jumps out, and if one actor jumps out or one role jumps out, then we can kind of piece it around that person. And if everyone's on the same page, and a lot of conversations, and you go, okay, great, let's start there and build around, and then we can play. Or, 3 roles come out, or, depending on what it is, and then we build from there. So I don't know. Sometimes it's just by osmosis. I mean, I don't know half the time. I work instinctively, and I'm hoping I can sometimes put a bit of pressure on the director or the producers if I feel like it's right. It just sits in my gut, and I know it. And sometimes I lie in bed having sleepless nights going, oh my God, we cast the wrong person. Oh my God, I hate that person. I can't stand it. Christine's laughing, and I feel sick in the stomach. Or I go, that person, they've chosen the wrong person, but tomorrow I'm talking to them, I'm going to talk them out of it. It's wrong. It's wrong. And And or we have long, in-depth conversations about really, why do you want that person? Why? And I really want this person because why? And then we have to go to, the worst part is we've got to go to the people that are branding people and the poster people and the fucking networks that you go, oh my God, and they go, but they've got blonde hair and I thought about it. And you go, oh my God, okay, we've got to play the game and we've got to present 3 actors and we know our favourites in amongst the 3, but we can't look like we're excited about that actor because they'll just want to sabotage it anyway. And so you go, okay, let's play the game, depending on who that person is, the network or the, the streamer or the whatever, or the investors. And they go, but no, our heart's set on that person, and we go, no. But then we secretly strategize about how we approach it, because hopefully once that decision's made, then we can cast appropriately around it. So it's each role is individually, one by one, until we then can go, okay, leave us alone. Let us just get on with our fucking job and stop interfering, because a lot of the suits interfere, and they should stay back away, and they don't, and they're getting more and more interfering, because there's more money involved in it. And so it's a game. We kind of play a game, and you have to get really clever about the game as a team, as me, the casting, as the director and the producers, because there's other producers because then they become the producers, and then there's producers, and then there's more producers, and then you get into the network sort of situation.
Can I add another? Are you as scared as I am about the end of this?
We've got 5 minutes.
There's like a little orange, and then it goes red at the end, and I'm really scared of what happens if we get to the end. We've got 5 minutes and 49 seconds. But I just realised that we've spent nearly the hour talking about the kind of big picture marquee talent, but actually what you just talked about in Kushla's question, this is the genius of what casting directors do. This is the fun stuff. This is actually the exciting part of the casting process that I love. And I think you do, Christina and others in the room, Kate, do a genius job. And I think I wanted to flag that. I was thinking about how to set this up and didn't do it at the start, but this is what's exciting. I feel like there's you said demystifying this casting process. There are particularly, I'm speaking to producers and directors, writers, particularly up and comers. There's a mystery around the casting process that I think you need to get past. You need to try, do everything you can to understand that process and so that you love it. And that starts by accepting the fact that it's a ridiculously imperfect process where, it's absurd. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. We have mime props and stupid, small, smelly rooms and nervous actors. And it's fucking ridiculous. But you have to accept that, right? And rely on these people, right? Get to know them, understand them, collaborate with them, so that when you see a tape and it's someone does a shonky audition and Anousha says, fuck, we've got to get that person back. I know that's a crap audition, but they can do better. They didn't learn their lines. Their mum had an accident on the way to, please trust me that you don't go, nope, they should have done a great job in the first thing. Exactly. We have to build this relationship, right? So that
it's true, and that's our job. Our job is acting, watching everything that actors do, and advocating for actors. So we want everyone to do well. I think everyone thinks every time they're going for an audition that we're there to go, hate what they do. Let's sabotage their career. But no, in fact, what we're wanting is we want 20 fucking amazing auditions that we can go to the director, oh my God, they've just blown us all away. How fantastic. How do we choose? We're spoiled for choice. Which way do we go? And, we love what actors do. I wouldn't do it otherwise, because we're in the room. Most of my real fun, the fun part, not the producing side of things, the fun part is being with actors, is seeing what actors do. I'm in the room with most beautiful actors that make me cry. I'm the only one behind the camera, and I'm just, I come out going, oh, I can't breathe. I'm so breathtakingly moved by what they've just done, or laugh out loud and got to wet my pants, and this secret world that we live in the studio, and you guys put yourself on the line all the time as actors, and we completely understand all that. And it's just a shitty thing to have to be an actor. I wouldn't wish it upon my best friend. But I think when it's great, and we acknowledge it, and you do shift and change, and actors change people's lives. Storytelling, films, television change people's lives. They're moved, and we're part of the cog in the wheel. And I know we're a small part and we're not that important, but we love what it happens and you're on screen, actors are on screen, and we're part of that process. And we're not, big noting ourselves at all. We're just lucky to be involved in the room and see what actors do. So we can help broker, because most producers and directors don't know who's around. They just go, oh, who do we cast? What do we do? And we go, what about blah, 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 all these people. So that's the only thing that we do, demystifying it, is presenting a whole lot of fabulous actors to that world on a job-by-job different chip. And we've got to be flexible. And then the other side is the horrible side, which is negotiating mass salaries and trying to do all the producing side of stuff. So, good for the producers. Unsung heroes, they are producers. It's not It's not easy to be a producer.
We've gone orange. I'm shit scared. Shall we have one more question?
I just wanted to ask if either of you knew anything about what's going on in the UK with regards to not needing the marquee talent as much. Because when I look at Fleabag, I May Destroy You, there seems to be a confidence there in their creators or in their not star talent to trust them with the story. But you're saying even the ABC is looking for marquee actors, which is really sad to me.
Yeah. Jess Hong, are you still in the room?
Who's that?
Jess was in the back of the room. Is she still there? Bugger, I want to talk to her. Jess, if people don't know, she's talking later on, but she's one of the stars of the Three Body Problem, which I think has no marquee talent in it, and that's the biggest show on Netflix. So you're right, there are shows.
Why are we not just?
Well, I guess that is an example. Well, but that is the creators of Game of Thrones. They get to do whatever they want. I mean, and there were a bunch of stars, I guess, in Game of Thrones, although arguably no marquee talent. They built those stars, right? So, yep. I mean, the
story. I don't know. I think it's just a history. It's what you're talking about, creating your own, marquee actors here in this country. It's kind of different. Just across the sea, it's a very different sort of situation, and how you perceive the industry and letting people kind of push you around a bit. And I think that's when I mean pushing back and going, we don't need to. We just tell the story that needs to be told. We might throw in a couple of great actors in there, but I think, it's up to, we as casting directors can't just keep saying it. It needs to be coming from the producers to push back on funding bodies and investors and distributors and just go, exactly, give examples like Game of Thrones. There was no stars in that. It's still sold. It makes no difference. You put a whole lot of stars in a film that aren't right, the film still flops. It makes no difference. They might have gone it, but there's no critical acclaim. Everyone knows it's a dog. So you sort of go, well, why did you put that actor in it? Because that person wasn't right. And only because you thought someone was going to watch it. It's cynical. It's a really cynical, stupid place to go. But I mean, there's not much I can do about it. It's as an industry, you've got to kind of push back.
I guess my final point on that, I'm thinking about listening to what Lulu said this morning, and your point, Max, about pushing back. It's like, if give me something tangible to push back with. If you're attached as the writer director and you've got a piece of work that I can go into the room with Netflix and say, no, she's right, we don't need a star. Just fucking look at her short film or look at the thing, and you just have to fucking trust us. I guess that's that there are examples. Lula's an example of that. There are examples of that. I mean, then you go chicken and egg. How do you get that? How do you get that first bit of work up? I suppose
we try and audition an actor that we really love, and then present it in part of the pitch doc. And so when you're actually trying to raise the money, and especially if it's a young, like if it's a Heartbreak High show or something, you go, okay, here's all these great actors that we think, and then you present it because everyone wants it. Present that group of people that we want and see if that can get us across the line with a whole lot of unknown actors, because look at this slate of fantastic people and put the puzzle together and present it, and hopefully someone goes, yeah, great idea, let's just do it because the story works, and we'll create all these amazing kids and sell it that way, possibly.
Great. Thank you so much to Anousha Zarkesh and Fraser Brown.
The Big Screen Symposium 2024 was presented by Script to Screen. We gratefully thank our event partners, the New Zealand Film Commission, Images and Sound, New Zealand On Air, and Te Mangai Paho. Voiceover is by Jamie Irvine, and the music is by Poddington Bear. You can read more about these speakers at our website, www.bigscreensymposium.com. This podcast is brought to you thanks to generous support from Images and Sound.